Welcome back, Rare Coin Insider. In today's video, we are going to explore one of the most fascinating, mysterious, and surprisingly valuable coins that has ever circulated in the United States. A coin that on the surface looks like an ordinary penny, something you could find on the ground, in your piggy bank, or at the bottom of an old jar. Yet in the world of numismatics, the world of coin collectors and coin enthusiasts, this same coin has turned into a legend. I am talking about the 1970 Lincoln cent, a coin that carries with it not only the familiar face of Abraham Lincoln, but also a story of design, symbolism, history, rarity, rare varieties, and rumors of astronomical value that have made it one of the most talked about coins on the internet. Imagine a coin worth just 1 cent at the time of its circulation, now being spoken of in whispers and in headlines as something that could be worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Some even claim $366 million. That figure alone is enough to grab attention, but let's carefully peel back every layer of this coin story, so you can understand why the 1970 Lincoln cent is more than just a penny. It is a symbol of America's history, and a potential jackpot for those lucky enough to find the right one. The first thing to understand about the 1970 Lincoln cent is what the D stands for. It represents the Denver Mint, one of the official facilities of the United States Mint, where this coin was struck. In 1970, the United States Mint was producing Lincoln cents at multiple locations, including Philadelphia, San Francisco, and Denver. Each mint has its own reputation, its own quirks, and its own history. Denver was known for producing coins in very high numbers, with speed and volume often prioritized over fine detail, and that sometimes allowed unusual varieties and striking errors to slip through the cracks. Those mistakes, which at the time might have seemed like imperfections, are today exactly the features that collectors look for when they want a coin that is rare and valuable. Now let us talk about the basic specifications of this coin. The 1970 Lincoln cent is composed primarily of copper. Specifically, the coin is made of 95% copper and 5% zinc and tin. This copper composition gives the coin a distinctive reddish-brown tone when freshly minted, although most of the examples in circulation today have darkened to a more brown or chocolate shade as the copper has reacted with the air and oils from human hands over the decades. The weight of the coin is approximately 3.11 grams, and its diameter is 19 millimeters. If you place it on a scale, and it weighs significantly less, that would raise questions about whether it is a mint error, possibly struck on the wrong planchet, which is a dream scenario for collectors. The edge of the coin is plain, meaning it does not have reading or grooves like a dime or quarter, and that simplicity has been consistent across the history of the Lincoln cent. On the obverse side of the coin, meaning the front side, we see the iconic bust of Abraham Lincoln. This design was created by Victor David Brenner in 1909, and it was the very first time that a real person, a president, was placed on a circulating United States coin. Lincoln's profile faces to the right, and above his head is the motto, "In God We Trust," a phrase that has become almost synonymous with American coinage. To the left of Lincoln's bust is the word, "Liberty," while to the right you will find the date, in this case 1970, and just beneath the date, if struck in Denver, a small capital letter D. That single tiny letter is what distinguishes the 1970 D from the 1970, and for collectors, that small detail makes a massive difference. On the reverse side of the 1970 Lincoln cent is the design of the Lincoln Memorial, which was introduced in 1959 to commemorate the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. This reverse was designed by Frank Gasparo, who at that time was the chief engraver of the United States Mint. The Lincoln Memorial design is deceptively simple at first glance, but under magnification it reveals an incredible hidden detail. In the very center of the memorial, if you look carefully between the columns, you can see a tiny representation of the seated statue of Lincoln, the very same statue that is found inside the actual Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C. This subtle detail was one of Gasparo's most brilliant additions, and it turned the coin into more than just a piece of change. It became a miniature piece of art that carried national pride in its design. Surrounding the memorial are the words, United States of America. At the top, the motto, E pluribus unum. Above the memorial, and the denomination, 1 cent, below. Every American who held this coin was holding not just money, but a pocket-sized monument. Now let us move toward the question of why this coin is so important in the world of collecting. The 1970 D. Lincoln cent is not inherently rare because millions were produced. However, in the coin world, rarity is often determined not by how many were made, but by how many survived in pristine condition or how many display unique minting errors or varieties. In the case of the 1970 cents, there are several varieties that have become legendary, particularly the 1970s small date and large date varieties. While the San Francisco coins get much attention, Denver also produced coins that display striking anomalies. These anomalies include double die obverse, off-center strikes, die breaks, and weak strikes. Each of these errors increases the desirability of the coin, and collectors pay thousands of dollars to add them to their collection. The grading of the coin also plays a critical role in determining its value. Coin grading is a professional system that evaluates the condition of a coin using a numerical scale from 1 to 70, with 70 being a perfect coin showing no wear and flawless surfaces under magnification. Services such as PCGS, the Professional Coin Grading Service, and NGC, the Numismatic Guarantee Corporation, are the most trusted names in this industry. A 1970 D. Lincoln cent that is certified by these services at a high mint state grade, such as MS65, MS66, or MS67, can fetch a premium far beyond its face value. The higher the grade, the sharper the details, and the fewer the blemishes, the more a collector is willing to pay. But beyond condition and errors, there is also the powerful human factor of stories, myths, and rumors. The claim that a 1970 D. Lincoln cent could be worth $366 million has circulated online, sometimes exaggerated, sometimes presented as fact, and it has captured the imagination of millions of people. Is such a value realistic? In truth, there has never been an auction sale for a single Lincoln cent anywhere near that amount. The most expensive Lincoln cents that have ever been sold are in the range of hundreds of thousands of dollars, not hundreds of millions. However, this claim persists, and it has turned into a kind of folklore in the coin collecting world. The figure of $366 million has become less about a literal price tag and more about a symbol of how a coin that looks worthless to some can be priceless to others. It reflects the idea that treasure can be hiding in plain sight, in the change you receive at the grocery store or in the coins left behind by your grandparents. For a moment, imagine the impact if such a coin really did sell for $366 million. It would instantly become the most valuable coin in the history of the world, surpassing the legendary 1933 double eagle, the 1794 flowing hair dollar, and the 1804 draped bust dollar, which have all achieved prices in the millions. Such a sale would create a frenzy in the media. It would change the way people look at coins forever, and it would make every pocket change searcher rush to check their pennies again. Whether or not the $366 million figure is true, the dream of it fuels the passion of collectors and keeps the 1970 D. Lincoln cent in the spotlight year after year. To put the cultural context of this coin into perspective, consider what was happening in America in 1970. The country was in the middle of the Vietnam War. The civil rights movement had left a deep mark on society, and the economy was experiencing inflation and shifts in the value of metals. The cost of copper was rising, and this would later lead the United States Mint to change the composition of the cent from mostly copper to mostly zinc in 1982. But in 1970, the coin was still a solid copper piece, a relic of an earlier era of coinage. Every 1970 cent you see today is a small time capsule from that turbulent decade, carrying within it the story of its time. The symbolism of the coin is powerful. Lincoln's portrait represents unity, equality, and leadership during one of America's most challenging periods, the Civil War. The Lincoln Memorial on the reverse is itself a tribute to his legacy, a place where countless Americans have gathered to reflect, protest, and remember. The combination of these designs on such a small copper coin gives it a significance far beyond its 1 cent denomination. For collectors, that symbolism adds an emotional layer of value. A coin is not just metal, it is memory, identity, and meaning. Collectors often search for hidden gems among ordinary coins. Many stories exist of individuals discovering that a coin they thought was worth 1 cent turned out to be worth thousands. With the 1970 Lincoln cent, such stories fuel the constant search. People dig through jars of change, scour estate sales, and buy old coin rolls from banks hoping to stumble upon the next rare variety. Some succeed, some do not, but the thrill of the hunt is universal. That is part of what makes numismatics so addictive. If you hold a 1970 Lincoln cent in your hand, you are holding more than just copper. You are holding a piece of artistry, a piece of history, and potentially, if luck and rarity are on your side, a piece of fortune. For many, the coin is priceless not because of money but because of what it represents. A direct link to the legacy of Lincoln, to the craftsmanship of the United States Mint, and to the enduring fascination humans have with collecting and preserving objects of the past. And yet, the legend of $366 million refuses to die. Even though experts often dismiss it as a myth, the story spreads. It spreads because people want to believe that miracles exist, that an ordinary coin in their pocket could transform their life. In that sense, the 1970 Lincoln cent has become more than a coin. It has become a dream. It has become hope stamped into copper, reminding us that sometimes the extraordinary is hidden inside the ordinary, waiting to be discovered by those who care to look closely enough. When we continue to explore the 1970 Lincoln cent, we begin to realize that what seems like a small copper coin is actually the intersection of art, history, economics, and human imagination. People often underestimate coins because they see them simply as tools of trade, items that pass from hand to hand with little thought. But in reality, every coin minted by a nation carries with it the values, symbols, and legacy of that nation. The 1970 penny is a perfect example of this. It is a bridge between the early 20th century when the Lincoln cent design first appeared and the modern world where coinage is gradually disappearing into digital transactions. Holding such a coin, especially one from 1970, is like holding a piece of America's cultural DNA. The Denver Mint, where this coin was produced, has a long and fascinating history. Located in Colorado, it began operations in the early 20th century and quickly became one of the most productive facilities of the United States Mint. By 1970, the Denver Mint was striking billions of coins each year. This massive output sometimes came at the expense of absolute perfection, and this is precisely why the Denver issues are famous for small varieties and mint errors. For coin collectors, a mint error is not a mistake to be avoided, it is a feature that turns an ordinary coin into something unique. Double die errors, where the coin's design appears double due to misalignment during the minting process, are some of the most sought-after varieties in all of numismatics. If you were to find a 1970 Lincoln cent with a strong double die obverse, you could be holding a coin worth thousands of dollars. One of the most interesting aspects of coin collecting is the psychology behind it. People are naturally drawn to stories of hidden treasure. The idea that you could find a coin in your pocket change that might pay off your mortgage or send your children to college is intoxicating. And this is exactly why the legend of the 1970 penny being worth hundreds of millions persists. Even if experts dismiss it, the story keeps spreading, because hope is powerful. In fact, numismatics thrives on this combination of history and hope. Collectors love the chase. They love the possibility that the next coin they examine under a magnifying glass could be the one that changes everything. The value of coins also ties into grading. Let us imagine two people both holding a 1970 Lincoln cent. One of them has a heavily circulated coin, worn down, scratched, dull in color. The other has a coin that looks almost perfect, with its original luster, sharp details, and minimal marks. To the casual eye, both coins might look the same, but to a collector, the difference could mean hundreds or even thousands of dollars. This is why third-party grading companies exist, to give coins an official grade and certify their authenticity. When a coin is sealed inside a plastic holder with a PCGS or NGC label, it immediately commands more trust and more money in the marketplace. Consider for a moment what a coin like this represents symbolically. Abraham Lincoln was chosen for the penny because of his status as one of America's greatest presidents, the leader who preserved the Union during the Civil War, and who fought for the end of slavery. His face on the smallest denomination coin was intentional, a way of saying that even the humblest currency should carry the noblest values. To see Lincoln's portrait on millions of pennies is to see a daily reminder of sacrifice, equality, and perseverance. On the reverse, the Lincoln Memorial design further reinforces this symbolism. The memorial is not just a building, it is a sacred site in Washington where countless speeches, protests, and ceremonies have taken place. When Frank Gasparo placed the memorial on the back of the cent in 1959, he was essentially turning every penny into a miniature monument. Imagine that, billions of tiny monuments traveling across the country, passing through the hands of ordinary citizens, carrying the image of a leader and the ideals of a nation. The coin also represents the economics of its time. In 1970, the cost of copper was rising but still manageable, so the cent could still be made mostly of copper without exceeding its face value. By the early 1980s, this balance shifted, and the men had to switch to cheaper zinc with just a thin copper coating. That means every 1970 cent you see today is from an older era, a solid copper piece that feels different in your hand compared to the lighter modern cents. Collectors appreciate this difference. They know that copper cents will eventually disappear from circulation because people hoard them for their metal content. Already, some individuals collect jars and bags of pre-1982 pennies simply for the copper, which has more intrinsic value than the coin's denomination. But among those jars of copper pennies, finding a 1970 with a rare error is like finding a needle in a haystack, a needle made of gold. Another fascinating dimension of the 1970 Lincoln cent is its connection to broader coinage history. The Lincoln cent was introduced in 1909, replacing the Indian head cent, and it was revolutionary because it placed a real person, a president, on circulating coinage. At the time, this was a break from tradition, as U.S. coins had typically featured allegorical figures like liberty. By 1970, the Lincoln cent had been circulating for over 60 years and had become a national staple. Generations of Americans grew up with it, flipping pennies into fountains, using them for good luck, and counting them out as part of their daily lives. The 1970 issues are part of this long continuum, connecting early 20th century America to the late 20th century, and even to today. Collectors also look at die varieties. During minting, dies are used to strike the design onto blank planchets. These dies wear out, are sometimes repolished, or are made with slight differences. In 1970, some dies at the Denver Mint created cents where the numbers in the date looked different. Collectors distinguish between large date and small date varieties, with small date coins often commanding more value. While the 1970s small date is the most famous, Denver coins also have subtle differences that intrigue specialists. The level of detail in this area of study is extraordinary. Collectors will analyze the shape of the numbers, the tilt of the mint mark, and the strength of the strike to determine if they are holding a valuable variety. It requires patience, magnification, and deep knowledge, but for those who are passionate, it is a thrilling pursuit. The concept of value in coins is never static. A coin that today might sell for a few $100s could tomorrow sell for thousands if a new discovery is made or if market demand surges. This is why auction houses like Heritage Auctions, Stack's Bowers, and others play such a central role in numismatics. When a rare variety of the 1970 penny comes to auction in high grade, the bidding wars can be intense. Collectors with deep pockets are willing to fight for the best examples, knowing that owning a top-graded coin gives them prestige and the potential for future profit. In this way, coins become investments, pieces of history that also hold the promise of financial gain. It is also important to reflect on the role of myth and exaggeration in coin collecting. The claim that the 1970 penny is worth $366 million is not backed by any official auction record. No coin has ever sold for anywhere near that amount. Yet the story lives on. Why? Because humans love legends. We love the possibility that something ordinary could secretly be extraordinary. The legend keeps people searching, keeps them curious, and keeps the coin relevant. Even if the real market value of the most valuable 1970 cent is in the tens of thousands, the myth of hundreds of millions elevates the coin into the realm of cultural phenomenon. Imagine someone finding a pristine 1970 double die cent in their change. At first, they might not notice. To them, it is just a penny. But then they take a closer look and realize the date is doubled, or Lincoln's profile shows unusual characteristics. They research online, discover its rarity, send it to a grading company, and suddenly that penny becomes a ticket to a whole new life. Stories like these are what fuel the hobby. Even if the exact details vary, the dream remains consistent. The idea that life-changing fortune can hide in the smallest places. The durability of coins also plays a role in their mystique. A paper bill from 1970 is unlikely to survive in good condition today, but coins endure. Copper pennies can last centuries. This means that every 1970 cent still out there in circulation or in collections is a survivor. Each one has passed through countless hands, through pockets, purses, and registers, carrying with it invisible histories of the people who used it. When collectors pick up such a coin, they are not just holding metal, they are holding a story, a silent witness to decades of American life. To understand the obsession with the 1970 penny, one must also understand the broader appeal of Lincoln cents. They are often the gateway for new collectors. Because pennies are so common, children often start collecting them first, checking dates and mint marks, trying to complete a set. This accessibility is what has made the Lincoln cent series the most collected series in American numismatics. A rare 1970 variety becomes all the more valuable because it fits into this broader narrative. Everyone knows pennies, everyone can relate to them, and so when a penny turns out to be rare, it feels like something anyone could have discovered. That universality is powerful. Let us also consider the artistry of the coin. Victor David Brenner's portrait of Lincoln is remarkable in its simplicity. Unlike some more elaborate coin designs, the Lincoln cent's obverse is restrained, dignified, and timeless. It has endured for over a century with only slight modifications. Frank Gasparo's reverse design of the Lincoln Memorial complements it perfectly, turning the coin into a conversation between portrait and monument, between person and legacy. When you hold a 1970 cent, you hold a conversation, you hold a dialogue between past and present. Finally, let us return to the idea of market value. While $366 million may be more myth than fact, the real value of certain 1970 cents is still significant. In high mint state grades with strong errors, values can range into the thousands. For collectors, these are not just coins, they are investments and treasures. For everyday people, they are a reminder that sometimes even the smallest things can surprise you. And for historians, they are artifacts that tell the story of America in the 1970s, of copper, of minting, of Lincoln, and of the enduring fascination with coins. The 1970 Lincoln cent teaches us a lesson. It teaches us to look closely, to pay attention, to see beyond the surface. Because sometimes, what seems ordinary is in fact extraordinary. Sometimes a penny is more than just a penny. Sometimes it is a story, a symbol, a piece of history, and yes, maybe even a fortune. As we dive deeper into the story of the 1970 Lincoln cent, it becomes clearer that this is not just a coin. It is a mirror that reflects the layers of American life, economics, and culture from the past century. Every detail on the coin tells a story, every mint mark holds meaning, and every variety discovered by collectors adds another chapter to an ongoing saga that has captivated the imagination of millions. By the time the Denver Mint struck these pennies in 1970, the Lincoln cent had already been circulating for over 60 years. Yet the fascination with it had only grown stronger, and for good reason. Coins like this remind us that even the most ordinary objects can become extraordinary once we learn to see what lies beneath their surface. The Denver Mint, as we know, was responsible for striking the 1970 issue. Denver was known for its massive production numbers, sometimes producing billions of coins in a single year. The scale of its operations meant that while the majority of coins came out perfectly normal, some escaped with slight imperfections, doubling, misaligned dies, weak strikes, and other anomalies. For the average person in 1970, these coins were invisible. People used them to buy candy, pay for bus rides, or collect in jars without giving them a second thought. But for today's collectors, those small imperfections are treasures. They are the reason why some 1970 cents are worth only 1 cent, while others can reach into the thousands or more. Let us pause and imagine what it was like in 1970. Gas was 36 cents a gallon. The average monthly rent was about $150, and the United States was caught up in major cultural shifts. The Vietnam War dominated the news, young people were marching in protests, and music, art, and fashion were changing the landscape of American identity. And in the middle of all this, the Denver Mint was producing copper pennies that seemed ordinary, but were destined to become relics of their time. To hold one today is not just to hold money, but to hold a slice of history. Each coin is a survivor of that era, still circulating in pockets or lying forgotten in drawers. The weight of the coin, 3.11 grams, might not seem like much, but it represents the solidity of an earlier age of coinage. In contrast to modern cents, which are made of zinc and coated with a thin layer of copper, the 1970 penny is a solid piece of copper alloy. That gives it a denser feel, a more lasting durability, and an intrinsic metal value that far exceeds today's pennies. Over time, as copper became more expensive, people began to hoard pre-1982 pennies because the metal itself was worth nearly as much as the coin's face value. This adds another layer of attraction to the 1970 cent. Not only is it historically and numismatically valuable, but it is also materially valuable. One of the most intriguing aspects of the Lincoln cent series, and especially the 1970 issues, is the existence of small date and large date varieties. While these are most famously associated with the San Francisco Mint, Denver cents also have their own quirks. Collectors scrutinize the shape of the numbers in the date, particularly the 0, the tilt of the 7, and the positioning of the mint mark. These tiny differences can mean the difference between a common coin and a rare one. This is the kind of detail that keeps collectors hooked, spending hours with magnifying glasses, searching through rolls of pennies to find the elusive variety that might just change their fortunes. Now, When people hear the number $366 million associated with a penny, their first reaction is disbelief. And that is understandable. How can something so small, so common, be worth more than most people will ever see in a lifetime? The truth, of course, is that this figure is not tied to any actual auction result but to a legend that has spread across the internet. Still, the power of that legend cannot be dismissed. It fuels curiosity, inspires hope, and keeps the story of the 1970 D. Lincoln cent alive. Even if no one has ever paid that much for one, the idea that they could sparks endless conversations, countless videos, and ongoing searches. In this way, the coin has transcended its physical reality and entered into the realm of myth. But myths often have a basis in reality. While number 1970 D penny has sold for hundreds of millions, rare varieties and mint errors have sold for thousands and even tens of thousands of dollars. That is real money, and it proves that sometimes the smallest coins can have the biggest impact. If you are holding a 1970 D Lincoln cent in pristine uncirculated condition, and especially if it has a rare doubling or error, you are holding something that collectors all over the world want. That demand is what drives the market, and in numismatics, demand often matters as much as rarity. The artistry of the coin cannot be overlooked. Victor David Brenner's portrait of Lincoln, introduced in 1909, was groundbreaking. It was simple, dignified, and captured Lincoln's seriousness and strength. For over a century, it has endured with only minor changes. In 1970, when the Denver Mint struck this penny, Americans were used to seeing Lincoln's face on their cents, but they probably did not pause to appreciate the artistry. Yet to collectors, the design is timeless. On the reverse, Frank Gasparo's Lincoln Memorial design added a modern twist, replacing the earlier wheat ears reverse. The hidden detail of the tiny seated Lincoln inside the memorial was a stroke of genius, a way to reward close observation and turn the coin into a miniature canvas of national pride. Together, these designs made the penny into more than just currency. They made it into a piece of art that carried meaning far beyond its face value. Collectors know that condition is everything. A 1970 D penny that has been in circulation for decades, scratched and dull, might still be interesting, but its market value is minimal. A coin that has never been spent, that retains its original luster and sharpness, is a completely different story. Mint state examples, graded MS-65, MS-66, or even higher, are incredibly desirable. When paired with an error or rare variety, they become treasures. Auction houses have sold such coins for thousands of dollars, and collectors keep hunting for more. The thrill of finding one in the wild is what drives so many people to keep looking through their spare change. The Denver Mint mark, that tiny D beneath the date, is itself a symbol of the importance of mint locations. Without it, the coin would simply be a 1970 Lincoln cent from Philadelphia. But with it, it becomes part of Denver's legacy. Mint marks matter because they tie coins to specific places, to specific moments in history. They allow collectors to build sets, to compare differences, to trace the evolution of coinage across the country. A 1970 D cent is not just a coin, it is a coin from Denver, and that matters. When we consider the broader context of the Lincoln cent, we see why the 1970 D is so appealing. The Lincoln series is the most collected coin series in the United States, and perhaps the world. Children start with pennies because they are accessible, because they are everywhere, and because the challenge of collecting different dates and mint marks is fun and rewarding. This means that rare varieties, like the 1970 D errors, are in incredibly high demand. Everyone wants them because everyone understands them. You do not need to be a millionaire to start collecting pennies. Anyone can start, but only a few will find the rare treasures. This universal accessibility is what makes Lincoln cent so powerful in the numismatic world. The story of the 1970 D Lincoln cent is also a reminder of how value is created. A coin's value is not just its metal content or its face value. It is a combination of history, rarity, condition, demand, and story. The $366 million claim may be exaggerated, but it highlights the role of story. A coin with a great story becomes legendary, and legends are priceless. That is why people continue to talk about the 1970 penny, to search for it, to dream about it. It is not just a coin, it is a symbol of possibility. Imagine for a moment that you are a collector who has just discovered a pristine 1970 penny with a strong double die obverse. You send it to a grading company, and it comes back as MS67 red, one of the highest possible grades, with the error clearly noted. Suddenly, you have something that only a handful of people in the entire world own. Collectors and investors line up to bid for it, and the auction ends with a hammer price of tens of thousands of dollars. That moment is life-changing, not only because of the money but because of the thrill of discovery. That is what the 1970 Lincoln Cent offers: the possibility of discovery, the possibility that something small could be enormous. And so the coin continues to fascinate. It fascinates because it is ordinary and extraordinary at the same time. It fascinates because it is copper and art, history and hope, myth and reality. It fascinates because even though it is worth 1 cent, it might be worth a fortune. The 1970 Lincoln Cent reminds us that treasure is not always buried deep underground or locked away in vaults. Sometimes, treasure is right in front of us, in our change, in our pockets, in the coins we overlook every day. And sometimes, all it takes to see it is a closer look. When people think about coins, they often imagine piles of loose change, something taken for granted, something exchanged without thought. Yet, when we take the time to slow down and look closely at an object like the 1970 Lincoln Cent, suddenly what was invisible becomes extraordinary. The Denver Mint's 1970 issue has become a symbol of how hidden value can lie in plain sight. This penny, small in size, light in weight, and made of a simple copper alloy, carries within it stories of history, economics, design, craftsmanship, and cultural meaning that extend far beyond its humble appearance. The more we peel back the layers, the more fascinating it becomes, and the more we understand why collectors, investors, and ordinary people continue to search for it, talk about it, and dream about it. The Denver Mint struck hundreds of millions of these pennies in 1970, and from the outside, one might assume that such a massive mintage would make them common and uninteresting. But the truth is that rarity in coin collecting is not always about absolute numbers. Sometimes, rarity comes from varieties, from errors, from differences that only the trained eye can spot. That is where the 1970 Cent becomes intriguing. Beneath its common surface lies the potential for rare gems, coins struck with double dies, coins with misplaced mint marks, coins struck off-center, coins that escaped quality control and now command serious premiums. These varieties turn the ordinary into the extraordinary. Collectors have long recognized that certain years in the Lincoln Cent series are more famous than others. 1909, the first year of issue, is always in demand. 1914 D is a key date that every collector dreams of. 1955 is known for its dramatic double die. And then there is 1970, where the D and S Mint issues carry varieties that keep numismatists awake at night. The Denver coin, with its solid copper composition and distinctive mint mark, represents a moment in time when the United States was still producing coins that felt substantial, coins that would survive decades of circulation, coins that could one day become legendary. The design details are worth pausing over. On the obverse, Abraham Lincoln's profile stands with dignity. His gaze is steady, his jaw strong, his hair carefully engraved. The word liberty is clear to the left, the date 1970 sharp to the right, and beneath it the tiny D that signals its birthplace in Denver. Above, The national motto, "In God We Trust," forms a reminder of values, of belief, of continuity. On the reverse, the Lincoln Memorial dominates, flanked by the words United States of America and the simple denomination 1 cent. In the center, almost hidden unless you look closely, sits the tiny seated statue of Lincoln himself, an echo of the man whose portrait graces the other side. To look at the coin is to look at history condensed into art, at a miniature sculpture that you can hold between your fingers. The weight of 3.11 grams may sound technical, but in the hand it feels solid compared to modern zinc pennies. Modern cents, introduced after 1982, weigh only 2.5 grams and lack the same density. Collectors who handle older coins immediately notice the difference. The 1970 cent carries that authentic feel of real copper, a material that connects us to the earth, to mining, to industry, to the raw resources that built nations. Copper has always been valuable, and over time its market price has risen. That means that even apart from numismatic interest, a coin like the 1970 has intrinsic worth. It is a piece of copper, not just a token. And that intrinsic worth only adds to its allure. But beyond metal and design, what fascinates people most is the claim that such a coin could be worth hundreds of millions of dollars. $366 million, to be exact, is the figure that has circulated on the internet and in sensational headlines. While no official record exists of any coin selling for that amount, the myth has power. It transforms the 1970 Lincoln cent from a curiosity into a legend. It sparks imagination. People ask themselves, what if I have one of these coins in my pocket right now? What if I am sitting on a treasure without even knowing it? That spark of hope is priceless. It keeps people engaged, it keeps them searching, and it turns numismatics into an adventure. Of course, serious collectors know that actual market values are lower, though still impressive. High-grade examples of the 1970 penny can sell for hundreds or thousands of dollars, depending on the condition and the presence of errors or varieties. For example, a sharp double die obverse or a well-preserved mint-state coin can attract fierce bidding at auction. Grading companies like PCGS and NGC play a vital role in determining value by certifying condition, authenticity, and details. A coin graded MS66 or MS67 red is vastly more valuable than a circulated example. This grading system, with its precise standards, gives structure to the market and provides collectors with confidence. The human element in this story cannot be ignored. Consider the countless people who, upon hearing about the 1970 penny's supposed fortune, rushed to check their change jars, their piggy banks, their old collections. They dig through rolls of pennies, eyes straining through magnifying glasses, searching for that one detail that might set their coin apart. For most, the search yields nothing but ordinary coins. But the act of searching itself is meaningful. It connects people to history, to curiosity, to discovery. It creates stories to share with friends and family. Even if no one finds a $366 million coin, everyone finds a moment of wonder, and that is something valuable in its own right. The Denver Mint, by striking this coin, played its part in a larger narrative of American identity. The Lincoln cent has always been about more than money. It was introduced in 1909 to commemorate the centennial of Abraham Lincoln's birth. It was the first U.S. coin to feature a real person, breaking away from the tradition of allegorical figures. This was a bold step, one that honored Lincoln as a unifying figure in American history. By 1970, that choice had become a tradition, and the Lincoln cent was an institution. Denver's mint mark on the 1970 issue is a continuation of that institution, a sign that even in turbulent times, the country's symbols endured. The cultural backdrop of 1970 makes the coin even more interesting. The United States was in the midst of political unrest, social change, and economic challenges. The coin reflects the resilience of a nation moving forward despite difficulties. To hold a 1970 penny is to hold a piece of that era, to imagine the hands it may have passed through, the lives it may have touched. Perhaps it was used by a child to buy candy, by a worker to make change for a bus ticket, by a soldier's family to pay for postage. Each coin carries invisible stories, and each story adds depth to its value. The mythic value of hundreds of millions is also a reflection of our human tendency to dream big. We love the idea that treasure can be hiding in plain sight, that luck can strike anyone, anywhere, at any time. This is why stories of the 1970 Lincoln cent go viral, why people share them with excitement, why videos are made, and why this topic refuses to fade. The myth is not about the money alone. It is about the hope, the thrill, the magic of possibility. Collectors, historians, and dreamers all come together around this coin. For collectors, it is about the details, the varieties, the errors, the grades, the provenance. For historians, it is about the context, the design, the minting process, the era. For dreamers, it is about the story, the chance of unimaginable fortune from something so small. This convergence makes the 1970 penny unique. It appeals to everyone in different ways, and that universal appeal is why it continues to capture attention. The coin's longevity also matters. 50 years have passed since it was struck, yet it remains relevant. Many coins fade into obscurity once they are out of circulation, but the Lincoln cent endures, and within it, the 1970 stands out as a star. This endurance is part of the magic. Generations of people can connect to it. Grandparents may have used it in their youth, parents may have collected it, children may be discovering it today. It bridges time, linking past, present, and future, and so the legend grows. The 1970 Lincoln cent is not just copper, not just art, not just history. It is a symbol of hidden treasure, of possibility, of the extraordinary within the ordinary. Whether or not one ever sells for hundreds of millions of dollars, the fact remains that this coin has achieved something remarkable. It has captured the imagination of the world. It has proven that even the smallest objects can tell the biggest stories. And it has shown that sometimes the greatest treasures are already in our hands, waiting for us to see them with new eyes. When people begin to learn about coin collecting, they often discover that there is far more to the hobby than simply stacking coins in an album. Each coin becomes a portal into history, a symbol of craftsmanship, and sometimes a ticket to financial fortune. Among all of the coins that exist in the United States series, the 1970 Lincoln cent continues to stand as one of the most talked about, searched for, and mythologized pennies of all time. It is a coin that teaches us about rarity, value, imagination, and the very nature of how small things can carry massive meaning. The story always begins with its appearance. The coin looks like any ordinary penny. Lincoln's portrait on one side, the Lincoln Memorial on the other. A single letter D sits under the date, showing its origin in the Denver Mint. Yet this small symbol of place transforms the coin's identity. The Denver Mint has been producing coins for generations, and each mint mark it leaves behind gives the coin a signature, like a fingerprint, that tells us exactly where it was born. For the 1970 penny, that mark is crucial. Without the D, the coin would be from Philadelphia, without distinction. With the D, it enters into the world of variety hunting and numismatic curiosity. The weight of the coin is 3.11 grams, a detail that might seem trivial, but weight matters in the world of coins. It is not only about authenticity, but also about material. In 1970, pennies were still made of a strong copper alloy, 95% copper, and 5% tin and zinc. This composition gave the coin a distinctive look, a warm reddish-brown tone that deepened with time. Modern pennies, after the switch in 1982, are mostly zinc with a thin copper plating. When one holds a 1970 cent, and then compares it with a modern penny, the difference in feel and sound is immediate. The older coin feels denser, it rings more solidly when tapped, and it carries with it the sense of a bygone era of minting standards. But what makes the 1970D so fascinating is not just its composition or its mint mark. It is the idea of value. Everywhere across media, one encounters claims that this humble cent could be worth a staggering $366 million. This figure, though largely mythical, has entered into the cultural conversation. It is repeated, shared, debated, and even doubted, yet it never fails to capture attention. People love the idea that something so small, so ordinary, so easily overlooked could be hiding unimaginable wealth. This idea has fueled countless YouTube videos, articles, and stories of people digging through their change in hopes of striking it rich. Behind the myths, however, lies the genuine truth of numismatics. Certain examples of the 1970D penny truly are valuable. Not all, not even most, but a select few. Coins struck with doubling on the obverse, coins that exhibit strong red luster in uncirculated condition, coins preserved carefully for decades without scratches, fingerprints, or tarnish. These can indeed fetch high prices. The numismatic market thrives on condition and rarity. A circulated 1970D might be worth a cent or perhaps a few cents to most people, but a flawless specimen in mint state condition, certified by a grading company as MS66 or MS67 red, can be worth hundreds or thousands of dollars. The higher the grade, the rarer it becomes, and collectors will pay a premium for rarity. Imagine, then, the excitement of discovering one of these coins. The thrill of pulling a coin from an old roll and realizing it has no wear, that its surfaces gleam with original mint luster, that the strike is sharp, that the details are crisp. To a collector, this is like unearthing treasure. And treasure is exactly what the myth of the $366 million penny promises. It is not only about money but about the experience of discovery, the sense of being part of a larger story. The Lincoln cent itself is a powerful icon. Introduced in 1909 to celebrate Lincoln's 100th birthday, it marked the first time a U.S. coin carried the portrait of a real person. Victor David Brenner's design gave the obverse its enduring look, with Lincoln's bust facing right, the word Liberty beside him, the date to the right, and the motto above. This design carried forward through decades, with minor adjustments, until the reverse was changed in 1959 to feature the Lincoln Memorial. That memorial reverse remained in place until 2008, and during those decades, it became a familiar sight to millions of Americans. The 1970D sits in the heart of that timeline, embodying both continuity and change. The cultural landscape of 1970 also contributes to the coin's mystique. The United States was navigating turbulent times, with political unrest, social transformations, and economic shifts. Against this backdrop, a small coin might seem insignificant, but in reality, it was part of the everyday lives of people who lived through those times. Each penny minted in Denver that year entered circulation, buying candy, paying for bus fares, being dropped into savings jars, exchanged between strangers. Each one participated in human stories that we will never fully know. That invisible history is embedded in the metal, adding depth to its meaning. Collectors often say that coins are time machines. They allow us to hold the past in our hands, to touch an artifact that has survived unchanged while the world around it shifted dramatically. The 1970 cent is exactly that. It has witnessed 50 years of history, silently traveling through pockets, drawers, collections, and now marketplaces where people assign it values ranging from 1 cent to hundreds of thousands. The claim of hundreds of millions is symbolic more than literal, but it reflects how powerful stories can become when they mix with hope. Grading plays a central role in this story. Without professional grading, the market would be chaotic, with no agreement on what condition means. Grading companies establish scales that define coins in precise terms: circulated, uncirculated, proof-like, red, brown, or red-brown. A 1970D in average condition may not be valuable, but one graded MS67 red is considered exceptional, a gem. Collectors compete for such coins at auctions, and their prices rise accordingly. This dynamic, where condition elevates value exponentially, explains how ordinary-looking coins can suddenly become extraordinary. But beyond the technical aspects, there is also the emotional side of collecting. People love the hunt, the mystery, the sense of connection. Stories of the 1970 penny spread quickly because they touch on something deeper in human psychology. The idea that luck can strike anyone, that hidden wealth can lie unnoticed, that the ordinary can become miraculous. Even when the $366 million figure is exaggerated, the underlying truth remains that coins like these carry more than financial value. They carry wonder. Every YouTube video, every article, every whispered rumor about the 1970 penny adds fuel to the fire. The legend grows because people want it to grow. They want to believe that fortune is within reach. They want to imagine the moment of discovering a life-changing coin. They want to tell their friends, to spark conversations, to join a community of searchers. The coin becomes not just metal but a story, a shared dream, a cultural phenomenon. And so the 1970 Lincoln cent lives on, both as a real collectible coin with genuine value, and as a mythic object with legendary worth. Its small size belies its massive impact. It continues to inspire, to educate, to excite, and to mystify. To study it is to study history, art, economics, psychology, and human imagination all at once. To hold it is to hold a piece of the past, a link to Lincoln, to Denver, to 1970, to everything that coin has passed through. Whether or not it ever sells for hundreds of millions, it has already achieved something greater. It has captured the imagination of the world. When the average person hears about a coin worth more than $300 million, their first reaction is disbelief. How could something as ordinary as a penny, something we often dismiss, ignore, or even lose without noticing, be worth more than the grandest mansions, more than the most luxurious cars, more than entire businesses? Yet the story of the 1970 Lincoln cent has taught people that in the world of numismatics, even disbelief can be reshaped into curiosity. People begin to look more closely at their change, to study the date, the mint mark, the color of the coin, the weight, the shine, and in doing so they enter a world that most had never considered before. The story takes us deeper into the idea of symbols. On the obverse side of the 1970 penny, the portrait of Abraham Lincoln is not just a design choice. It is a symbol of leadership, unity, and the fight for freedom. Every single penny that carries his face continues to echo his legacy. But when we examine the Denver mint mark beneath the date, it also becomes a symbol of origin, of place, of identity. Without that tiny d, the coin would not be the same. The letter is no larger than the tip of a pen, but it completely changes the story. It tells us that the coin was not struck in Philadelphia or San Francisco, but in the city of Denver, a mint known for its mass production, but also for the varieties and errors that slip through. The mint mark becomes a storyteller in itself. Collectors know that not all 1970 cents are created equal. Many exist, and the majority are worth very little beyond face value. But a few coins carry unique traits: doubled dies, sharp strikes, full luster, or simply immaculate preservation. These traits transform the coin from common to coveted. The doubled die variety, for instance, is famous among collectors. It shows doubling in the date and lettering, a result of the die being impressed twice at slightly different angles. To the untrained eye, it may look like nothing more than a blur. But to the trained eye, it is a mark of rarity, a ticket to high value. Stories of people discovering double die coins in circulation have spread for decades. fueling the excitement around the 1970D.I in the market today. A genuine double-die 1970D penny in top condition has been known to sell for thousands, sometimes tens of thousands of dollars. Auction houses have documented these sales. Professional grading companies have authenticated them. The coins exist, and they are real. But somewhere along the way, the number $366 million entered the conversation. Perhaps it began as a misunderstanding, perhaps as an exaggeration, or perhaps as a piece of viral marketing to spark attention. Whatever the source, the number became legendary. People who never cared about coins suddenly cared. News outlets picked up the story. Social media spread it even further. And soon, the humble 1970D cent was no longer just a collectible. It was a symbol of the possibility of unimaginable wealth. To understand why people cling to such stories, we have to look at human nature itself. Humans are dreamers. They are drawn to stories of hidden treasures, lost fortunes, and miraculous discoveries. It is why tales of buried gold, pirate treasure, and winning lottery tickets have survived for centuries. The 1970D penny became a modern-day equivalent. It was no longer just a coin. It was a dream pressed in copper. A dream that one day, by chance, by luck, by fate, you might stumble upon something extraordinary in the most ordinary place. But dreams alone do not drive value. The coin market has its own rules. Condition is king. Rarity drives demand. Certification provides trust. Without those pillars, the market would collapse into chaos. That is why professional grading services matter. A 1970D cent graded by PCGS or NGC with a high mint state red grade is not just a coin, it is a guarantee. It carries with it the weight of expert analysis, the trust of collectors, and the confidence of investors. Those slabs of plastic and paper certificates may not look glamorous, but they are the foundations of value. The weight of the coin remains a technical yet symbolic detail. At 3.11 grams, it is heavier than today's zinc pennies, and that difference makes it feel more substantial. Pick it up, and you sense that you are holding not just a coin, but a relic from a time when things were made to last. That weight, combined with the copper composition, gives the coin its distinct reddish glow. When preserved carefully, untouched by circulation, the coin's surface gleams with fiery tones of red and orange, colors that collectors prize above all. A red 1970D cent is far more valuable than a brown one, because it represents the coin as close as possible to the way it left the mint half a century ago. The design itself also adds to the coin's appeal. On the reverse, the Lincoln Memorial sits framed between the words United States of America and 1 cent. Look closely, and you can even see a tiny image of Lincoln seated inside the memorial. This detail astonishes many who never realized it before. It is a design within a design, a portrait within a monument, a hidden element that rewards careful observation. Such details enrich the experience of collecting, reminding us that coins are not just money. They are miniature works of art. As the story of the 1970D penny spread, it began to influence not only collectors, but also the general public. People started searching through jars of pennies, revisiting old piggy banks, sorting through rolls from banks, all in the hope of uncovering a fortune. Entire families spent evenings examining coins with magnifying glasses. Schools, churches, and community groups shared the legend. Suddenly, coin collecting was no longer a niche hobby, but a subject of mainstream curiosity. What this demonstrates is the power of narrative. Without the story, the coin would be nothing more than copper and numbers. With the story, it becomes alive. It becomes a phenomenon. It becomes a bridge between history, art, economics, and imagination. And even if not a single coin ever sells for hundreds of millions, the story has already created value, emotional value, cultural value, and educational value. people have learned about Lincoln, about mint marks, about coin grading, about copper composition, about the Denver Mint, and about the joy of searching, all because of a single story tied to a single penny. Yet, in the numismatic world, legends are not entirely baseless. Every great collectible has its myths. The 1933 Double Eagle, the 1913 Liberty Nickel, the $1,804, all coins that became legendary, fetching millions at auction. Each of these stories once seemed impossible. And while the 1970 penny may not truly bring $366 million, it carries the same energy of mystery and allure. In time, perhaps, some extraordinary specimen of the coin will reach the hands of a collector who pays a record-breaking price, cementing its place among the greats. Until then, the 1970 cent lives in two worlds. The world of fact, where it is a collectible worth modest to significant sums depending on condition, and the world of imagination, where it is worth hundreds of millions. It is this duality that keeps people interested. If it were only ordinary, it would fade into obscurity. If it were only legendary, it might be dismissed as fantasy. But being both at once makes it irresistible. And so the narrative continues, shared from one collector to another, from one YouTube video to a million viewers, from one generation to the next. The 1970 penny proves that even the smallest objects can hold the greatest power when stories are attached to them. It proves that value is not only in metal but in meaning. It proves that hope, curiosity, and imagination can transform a simple coin into an object of wonder. And perhaps most importantly, it reminds us that history lives in the palm of our hands, waiting to be discovered, appreciated, and cherished. Every story about coins begins with a simple truth. They were never designed to be treasures. They were designed to be used, to pass from hand to hand, to buy bread, milk, and newspapers. They were meant to live short, practical lives. Yet history has shown us time and again that ordinary objects often transform into extraordinary artifacts when time, rarity, and imagination come together. The 1970 Lincoln cent is a prime example of this transformation, a tiny copper disc born in an age of political turbulence, economic shifts, and cultural change, now whispered about as if it were a ticket to unimaginable wealth. Think about the year 1970 for a moment. America was a country still reeling from the 1960s, a decade of protest, struggle, and reform. The Vietnam War was raging, public trust in government was being tested, and the nation's sense of identity was shifting. Against this backdrop, the U.S. Mint continued its quiet, mechanical work of striking billions of coins. For the mint workers, the 1970 cent was just another job, another day at the press, another copper planchet to be struck with the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln. But decades later, those very coins would capture global attention because of stories attached to them. The value of the coin lies not only in its rarity or in the possibility of errors, but also in the psychology it awakens in people. Humans are drawn to rarity because rarity suggests exclusivity. If something is common, we ignore it. If it is scarce, we chase it. The Denver Mint struck hundreds of millions of pennies in 1970, but the tiny subset of coins that exhibit unique qualities, such as doubled dies or flawless mint state preservation, create a sense of exclusivity. And exclusivity creates desire. The desire then translates into bidding wars, into stories, into myths, and finally into numbers that defy reason. Weight and design become central talking points for collectors. The 1970 cent, at 3.11 grams, was among the last generations of U.S. pennies to be made of nearly pure copper. Later pennies were made with zinc cores, lighter, cheaper, and less enduring. The weight difference may seem trivial, but for collectors it marks an era, a reminder of a time when even the smallest coins had substance. Hold a 1970 in one hand and a modern penny in the other, and you immediately feel the difference. That sensation translates into nostalgia, and nostalgia has value. The design continues to capture attention. Victor David Brenner's portrait of Lincoln had already graced the penny since 1909, but in 1959, the reverse changed to feature the Lincoln Memorial, commemorating the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. By 1970, this design was familiar to Americans, yet it carried a hidden detail that still amazes people when they discover it. Inside the memorial, you can see a tiny figure of Lincoln sitting in his chair, visible even under magnification. It is almost poetic that a coin honoring Lincoln on the obverse also contains his image in miniature on the reverse, like a reminder that his legacy was both monumental and intimate. And then comes the symbol that makes this coin unique, the D mint mark. At first glance, it seems so minor, just a tiny letter beneath the date. But for collectors, that mark changes everything. Without it, the coin could be from Philadelphia. With an S, it could be from San Francisco. But with a D, it is distinctly Denver, and Denver's coins of 1970 have become the center of legends. The mint mark, though only a fraction of a millimeter in size, is like a passport stamp, proof of origin, proof of identity, proof of a story. The question many ask is why some of these coins are valued so highly, while others are worth little more than a cent. The answer lies in condition, errors, and demand. Most 1970 D cents are common, circulated, worn, scratched, and essentially worthless beyond face value. But a small number were preserved, tucked away in rolls, stored in mint sets, or forgotten in drawers, never touched by circulation. These coins retain their full red luster, their sharp details, their original brilliance. When graded mint state red 67 or higher, they become rare gems. The market rewards rarity with money, and suddenly a cent becomes a treasure. But the element of errors pushes the story further. The double die obverse variety is one of the most famous errors associated with this coin. Under magnification, you can see the doubling in the date and lettering. To the average person, it might appear as nothing unusual, but to a collector it is like spotting a hidden message, a sign that the coin was born differently. Errors are fascinating because they remind us that even in the mechanical world of minting, perfection is not always achieved. Mistakes slip through, and those mistakes become treasures. A 1970 D double die can fetch thousands at auction, depending on condition. This blend of fact and myth created the foundation for the viral story that the 1970 D penny was worth hundreds of millions. Was it exaggerated? Absolutely. Did it spark interest worldwide? Without a doubt. People who never cared about coins suddenly wanted to know about mint marks, die varieties, copper weight, and grading scales. Children asked parents to check their pennies. Families sat together at kitchen tables with magnifying glasses. Banks received unusual requests for rolls of pennies. And all because of a story that gave hope that the smallest coin might hide the biggest fortune. Hope is powerful. Hope is what drives people to buy lottery tickets, to dig for buried treasure, to search the beaches with metal detectors. Hope is what fuels collectors to search through millions of coins in pursuit of the one. The 1970 D cent is a symbol of that hope. It whispers, "Maybe you will find me." And that whisper is enough to keep people searching. Even if the $366 million value is more legend than reality, the hope it generates is real power. Auction records show the truth of value in a more grounded sense. Certified high-grade 1970 D cents have sold for thousands. Certain varieties and errors have sold for tens of thousands. These are real sales, documented, proven. And yet, the idea of the coin being worth hundreds of millions adds a layer of myth that fuels fascination. Myths and facts often coexist in the coin world. Just as the 1913 Liberty nickel became legendary for its rarity, just as the 1933 double eagle became iconic for its legal battles, The 1970 cent has carved its place in the pantheon of coins that inspire awe. Collectors also understand that markets evolve. A coin that sells for a few hundred today might sell for thousands tomorrow, depending on demand. Trends change, discoveries are made, and publicity plays a role. The more a coin is discussed, the more attention it receives, the more its market value can climb. Videos, articles, and social media posts about the 1970 penny have already increased its demand. What once may have been ignored in a coin jar now becomes the subject of careful inspection. Publicity creates demand, and demand creates value. But the deeper lesson of the 1970 penny is not simply about money. It is about awareness. It is about slowing down, looking closely at the details of life, appreciating the small things that often go unnoticed. A penny is the smallest unit of currency, often treated as worthless, yet it contains layers of history, artistry, and symbolism. It carries the face of a president who preserved the Union, the image of a memorial that honors him, and the mark of a city where it was struck. It carries stories of workers, of machines, of errors, of collectors, and of dreamers. To hold a 1970 penny is to hold a fragment of history in your hand. In the end, whether the coin is worth 1 cent or $300 million, its true worth lies in the meaning it brings to people. For collectors, it is a challenge, a hunt, a pursuit of perfection. For dreamers, it is a symbol of possibility, proof that treasures might be hidden in plain sight. For historians, it is a relic of a moment in time, a window into the America of 1970. For everyone else, it is a reminder that even the smallest things can carry great significance if we choose to see it. And so the story of the 1970 Lincoln cent continues to spread, across auctions, across news outlets, across videos, across conversations. Every time someone picks up a penny and looks at it more closely, the legend grows. Every time a child asks a parent about the D beneath the date, the knowledge passes to the next generation. Every time a collector discovers a well-preserved specimen, the thrill of discovery is renewed. And every time someone hears the phrase, "worth $366 million," curiosity is sparked once again. The 1970 cent is not just a coin. It is a mirror of human fascination. It is a reminder that value is not fixed, that meaning can transform the ordinary into the extraordinary. It is a testament to the fact that stories give life to objects, and that even a penny can carry within it a fortune of imagination. The journey of the 1970 Lincoln cent is not merely a tale of metal and minting. It is a story of how human imagination transforms the ordinary into the extraordinary. The penny itself was never born to be famous. It was created to be spent, to be placed in pockets, to jingle in jars, to be given as change. For decades it was just another coin, overlooked, ignored, forgotten. Yet somehow, in the weaving of history and myth, this tiny copper disc became one of the most discussed pieces of numismatic lore in modern times, a coin that many now whisper about as though it carries a destiny beyond its face value. Think of the millions of people who have held a penny without ever looking at it. How many of those people unknowingly held a 1970 in their palm? How many of them let it slip through their fingers, unknowing of the tales that would later surround it? The beauty of this story is that it turns hindsight into awe. Every common penny suddenly carries the possibility of greatness, and that possibility is what stirs the imagination. Collectors often remind us that value is never fixed. A coin's worth is determined not by its original purpose, but by the demand it inspires in those who seek it. The 1970 cent embodies that lesson perfectly. Its weight of 3.11 grams may sound trivial. Its copper composition may sound ordinary. Its design of Lincoln and the memorial may seem familiar. But put it under the spotlight of rarity, error, and preservation, and suddenly it transforms into something else entirely. Suddenly, it becomes a prize worth chasing, a treasure that could turn a handful of change into a fortune. The claim that one of these coins could be worth $366 million may seem outlandish, but it represents something deeper than numbers. It represents hope. It represents the idea that even the smallest, most overlooked object in our lives could secretly hold unimaginable potential. People search through their coins not only because they want wealth, but because they want the thrill of discovery. They want to feel that they have uncovered something hidden in plain sight, something everyone else has overlooked. And in that sense, the 1970 cent is priceless because it sparks that hunger, that curiosity, that drive to look closer. Imagine the stories that will continue to be told in living rooms, classrooms, and online communities. Someone finds a penny with AD under the date, and suddenly conversations light up. Parents teach children about mint marks, children teach friends about coin errors, collectors share photos of their discoveries, and entire groups dedicate hours to discussing varieties. This is how legends spread, not through cold statistics, but through the warmth of human storytelling. The 1970 penny is not just a coin, it is a shared experience, a cultural phenomenon that continues to grow with every retelling. Even its design carries symbolic weight that makes it timeless. Abraham Lincoln's face on the obverse is not just a portrait of a president, it is the face of resilience, of unity, of a nation that survived its darkest days. His memorial on the reverse is not just a building in Washington, it is a shrine to ideals, to memory, to sacrifice. To hold a 1970 cent is to hold that symbolism in miniature, a reminder that greatness often hides in the smallest things. The mint mark itself, that tiny letter D, is more than a mark of origin. It is a reminder that details matter. Without that letter, the coin would be just another cent. With it, it carries the potential of legend. In that sense, the D is a symbol of how small details in our lives can change everything. A single letter, a single mark, a single error, and the ordinary becomes extraordinary. Throughout history, coins have carried myths, from ancient Roman aurei to medieval florins to modern American rarities. The 1970 cent joins that lineage as one of the coins that transformed from pocket change to legend. And legends have no fixed ending. They grow, they adapt, they inspire new generations. Decades from now, people will still be talking about the 1970 penny, not only because of its market value, but because of the story it carries. What then is the best way to end this story? Perhaps it is to remind ourselves that value is not measured only in dollars. The claim of $366 million is powerful because it captures attention, but the true value of the 1970 cent lies in the way it makes us see the world differently. It makes us slow down, look closer, pay attention. It makes us curious about the things we ignore. It makes us realize that history is all around us, hidden in our pockets, resting in drawers, waiting in jars. When you finish hearing about this coin, you might be tempted to look at your own change. And that is the real ending, or perhaps the real beginning of the story. The moment you pick up a penny and wonder, the story of the 1970 cent has already done its work. It has inspired you to look closer, to imagine, to hope. Whether you find a fortune or not, you will have discovered something just as valuable. The joy of curiosity. So remember this. The 1970 penny is not just a coin, it is a spark. A spark that lights up conversations, imaginations, and possibilities. A spark that turns the smallest object into the grandest of treasures. A spark that reminds us that legends can be born from the most unexpected places. And maybe, just maybe, one day someone listening to this story will discover their own 1970 cent, perfectly preserved, with a rare doubling, shining red in mint state, and perhaps the market will prove once again that myths can become reality. Until then, the legend of the 1970 Lincoln cent lives on, as a reminder that in the world of coins, and in life itself, greatness often hides in plain sight.